You're watching Gearz.
You know, the automotive aftermarket is a huge industry. It pulls in billions of dollars a year. But with all the stuff that's out there to do to your vehicle, I bet you can't tell me the #1 modification that people are doing. I mean, is it engine? Is it wheels? Is it tires, exhaust, stereo? What do you think? Well, those are all good guesses. But the #1 modification is actually a lot simpler than that. It is modifying your air intake and your filter. Now, some of you are probably thinking, an air filter? Why? Why is that so popular? Well, it's pretty simple. The engine is really nothing more than a big air pump. The better it blows air in and out, the better it's going to run. And a performance air filter will not only give you more power, it can give you better mileage, and it looks great when you pop the hood, and really good if you're not using a hood at all. But this modification didn't just appear a few years ago. No, it's been around since almost the beginning with a very unique story all its own. Let's check it out.
Ready, set, go and go. I got a gal that I love so.
Back about the time that Elvis started shaking things up on the Ed Sullivan Show and rock and roll began exploding across the airwaves, hot rodders began to realize that the more stuff you stripped off of a car, the faster it went. And the stock air filter was one of the first things thrown in the trash before you did any kind of racing. However, it didn't take long to realize that running an engine without an air filter would kill that engine very quickly. So, aftermarket filters slowly began to trickle into the market. Unfortunately, these early filters just had an open paper element. Now, they flowed better than your stock filter. They didn't last very long, about 3 months, unless, of course, you got one wet, and then it lasts about 20 minutes. So, the racing world was in serious need of a performance filter, and that's when Kenny and Norm came along. Kenny and Norm were a couple of motorcycle racers that saw that need for a real performance filtering system, especially in off-road racing. So, in 1969, they put their heads and their names together to create K&N. And the first reusable filter, tough enough to survive the rigors of racing, was born. Now, the filter seems simple enough, with just some layers of a special cotton gauze, held in place with some metal mesh, and then impregnated with a special oil that would pull the dirt. Simple, right? Well, the results were anything but simple. They were astounding. And the automotive world went crazy because now they had a filter that outflowed everything, it outfiltered everything on the market, and it was cleanable, which means you could use this over and over and over again for literally 1,000,000 miles or more.
About 23, 24 years ago, when the applications started being made for the automotive side of the business, and we realized that the product, not only was it such a good product, it was extremely durable. It replaced something that was disposable. And it became very apparent that these products not only would last a long time, but they'd last for the life of your vehicle. And so the number 1,000,000-mile warranty was basically picked because we believe and we have actual evidence that our products last that long.
Now, obviously, just making replacement filters was fine at first. But then, as vehicles got more sophisticated with fuel injection, things like that, people started asking for complete air intake systems because the stockers were so restrictive. The problem is, how do you build a system that you guarantee to go for 1,000,000 miles, fit like a factory piece, and still give the performance that you want to guarantee? Well, the answer is research and testing and more research and testing and then research and more testing.
We will not make an intake unless it makes horsepower. That is our guarantee. It will not be sold, it will not be developed. If it doesn't make the horsepower that we are totally happy with, it isn't going to be made.
Before any new kit hits the market, it's subject to numerous testing on the dyno and the flow benches, to make sure that it's not only going to flow well enough to deliver the horsepower increase that they're going to be happy with, but one that they can also guarantee that you will get when you put it on your rig.
Our guarantee is when I tell you this is going to make 15 horsepower, they put on a dyno, it's going to make 15 horsepower.
Of course, one of the most important things about a filter is it's got to be able to filter. So how do you test that? Well, we're in K&N's filtration lab. This is where Corey hangs out. We're going to talk about this a little bit. Corey, tell us what goes on in here. How do you test the filtration of a filter?
Well, Stacey, the important part about the whole filtration testing is that there's a standardization which is called the ISO standard 5011, and that's a worldwide standard, and it's all done through metrics and grams and cubic meters and all metric system. So that way anything that we do here is the same worldwide. So if a test is done here versus a test that we maybe will be comparing to over in Europe or whatever, it's all the same.
So it's universal.
Right, universal, yes.
Believe it or not, these guys actually buy dirt to run through their filters to see how effective they are. However, you know they've got some pretty sophisticated equipment to go along with that simple dirt to test these filters. But then again, some of their tools are not that sophisticated.
Anything after the test and during the test, we run that down the tube here, so that way you break anything free inside the tube there. Yeah, exactly. You're probably doing that behind me, aren't you?
Hey, welcome back to Gearz, where today we are taking a look at the unique world of the performance air filter through the eyes of one of the founding fathers, K&N Performance. Now, why is this important? Well, like I said before, it's the #1 modification that people are doing, whether they have a street machine or a bar stool or a hot rod or a 4x4 or a motorcycle. And if it is the #1 modification, how do you keep up with demand? Well, having a huge facility would help. Check it out. A lot has changed since 1969. Almost like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, the systems at K&N are all built and assembled in-house under tight security so no trade secrets can leak out. The products are continually being moved from assembly station to assembly station by a very cool conveyor system. And once they reach the end of the line, they're all done, packed up and sealed, and ready to ship out. And each box comes with its own version of a golden ticket.
It's one thing to stand behind your product with a 1,000,000-mile warranty. That's one thing, and that's very respectable to do. But to stand behind your consumer, to let them know that they're not going to be taken advantage of because you spent money on one of our filters, that's a whole different level. And that's what we need to do for this industry.
We all recognize the state of the economy and where we're at. You've got to give somebody something of value for the money that they spend. They work hard for their money, and that's the people that work at this company.
However, this is where the story makes a twist and ends up coming full circle, because we've already established that K&N's roots are in racing, and they've never forgotten that. Because in their thinking, if you can cross the finish line first on the racetrack, doing it on the street is not a problem. You'll find K&N filters on cars running in the IRL and the Formula One series, NASCAR, sprint cars, and other circle track racing, drag racing of all types, off-road racing, Baja, you name it. And with their own race shop turning out incredible machines of their own, they're involved firsthand in a lot of these motorsports. But the one race that really defines what they're all about is the Silver State Classic in Nevada.
Where else can you get an opportunity to drag whatever it is you've got, what type of hot rod, whether it's high-tech European sports car model or a hot rod or whatever the vehicle is. There's guys out there in their daily drivers. and go out to an area in Nevada where they section off 93 miles on 318 and basically just let you see how fast you can go for 93 miles. So, I mean, name me another event like that.
Now, there is no question that a lot has changed over the last 40 years. And K&N has continued to evolve to keep up with the times, so now we've got choices. Nah. But what hasn't changed is their commitment to do whatever it takes to be the best.
Tool Tech, brought to you by Cornwell Tools, the choice of professionals since 1919.
When it comes to building a custom vehicle, most people are comfortable doing the motor work, chassis, suspension, interior, things like that, because there's usually a lot of stuff available in the aftermarket to help you out. But when it comes to sheet metal work, that's a whole nother deal, because it's a creative process and you generally have to make what you need. And if you are into bending and shaping metal, one of the best investments you can make is a power hammer. Now, when most people think of a power hammer, they think of something like this massive Pullmax machine that weighs 2 tons, runs on 3-phase power, and takes up a whole corner of the shop. Now, this will definitely work the metal. I mean, there's no question about that. But it's big, and it's heavy, and it's expensive, takes up a lot of room. Fortunately, there are some choices out there that are better for working metal than this. Let's take a look. This is the new Super Hammer from Dake, and as you can see, it is a lot lighter, a lot more adjustable, a lot more maneuverable than that huge Pullmax. But this is not just some cheap little hobbyist toy here that's going to go out on you in a few years. No, this is a professional grade tool built for years of heavy use. And it'll form steel up to 16 gauge and aluminum up to 11 gauge. So you'll not only be able to do hoods and fenders, but you'll also be able to do floors and firewalls and heavier stuff. Yeah. Now, the best thing about a power hammer is it will do in just a few minutes what it would take you hours to do with a sandbag and a mallet. And the key is in the dies. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Now, basically, a power hammer consists of 2 dies that come together to shape metal. And by changing the dies, you can stretch metal, you can shrink it, you can dome it, you can run a bead in it, you can cut louvers in it. I mean, you can do pretty much whatever you want to do. Now, the dies that I've got here, notice I have a domed die, then I've got one with urethane. And when these come together, they basically do the same thing that a sandbag and a mallet do to put a shape into a piece of sheet metal. Check it out. The thing that you notice about this power hammer over most of the ones you see, it's not quiet it is. You don't need hearing protection. It's very, very smooth, not violent. And look at this, how nicely it's putting this dome in here. And in just a few minutes, here's what you've got. Take a look at this. It could be the start of a fender or a hood scoop or whatever. Do you know how long it would have taken you to do this with a sandbag and a mallet? Man. Now, some of you are probably thinking, you know, that's great. But you can stretch and shape metal like this with a sandbag and mallet. So why would I go to the extra cost of a power hammer? It's a good question. The answer is this guy here will shrink metal just as quick and easy as it stretches it. That's what we're going to do next. Okay, say you want to make a piece like this fender that curves down on the ends. Well, the only way to get this shape and keep this flange is you have to shrink it on this flange too. That will allow the fender to curve down, which means you need a shrinking die. Now this is called a thumbnail shrinking die. You see how they go together? And the way it works is when you push the metal in, it bends the metal up in the center. When you pull it back, it hammers it back together and shrinks it. Now, anytime you're making a panel, you don't just want to go in at random and start doing a panel. There'll be no way to control the shrinkage. What you want to do is draw out some sort of a grid like this to help you control it. Now, this particular grid is for a piece like the front of a fender or a gas tank that's going to come up and roll down in front. Now, obviously, with a shape like that, you're going to have to shrink it more on this outer edge than you will in the center. And having this grid will help you know where you've been and how much you've shrunk it. All right, let's get to it.
Tool Tech, brought to you by Cornwell Tools, the choice of professionals since 1919.
Hey, welcome back to Gearz, where we are right in the middle of demonstrating one of the coolest tools on the market for shaping sheet metal, the power hammer. Now, we've already showed you how well it stretches and shapes metal. Now we're going to show you how well it shrinks and shapes metal. Watch your feet there, man. On the first pass, we'll go all the way to our innermost line and work our way back. Believe it or not, that is how you want it to look after the first pass. Take a look. We got nice shrinkage right around this innermost line. That is what we were after. Of course, the rest of it looks like a potato chip. But we're going to take care of that by shrinking to this line, then to that one, then to that one. It's going to draw it all in. With each consecutive pass, just work more out to the edge, shrinking the edge, and in a few minutes, you'll have an incredible shape taking place. And once again, in just a few short minutes, you're ready to take a look at it. Now look how much we actually shrank that metal down. And we could have kept going. You keep running it through, it'll just keep shrinking it down. Now, once you have your shape roughed in like this, all you have to do is roll it through an English wheel. That'll smooth it all out. Or put on some planishing dies, and you can hammer it out smooth just like this, and you're going to be all finished. A power hammer will save you so much time and money, you're not going to believe it, especially if you were going to pay somebody to make some panels for you. Now, obviously, if you're not into working metal, you don't need a power hammer. But if you want to build your own panels and work that metal, this is one of the best investments you're ever going to make. Speaking of good investments, the one thing that every gearhead has got to have is a good set of tools, because that's what makes all this work possible. But I'm not talking about the cheap bargain basement stuff. No, I'm talking about real tools. The problem is, professional grade tools are expensive. So, Cornwell has decided to help one of you guys out and put some good stuff in your shop. Now, obviously, the first thing that you're going to need is a box. And Cornwell picked a box that's a good size, very maneuverable, because most gearheads don't have a lot of room in their garage. Of course, it's got great storage in the drawers, and it's fully locking. So, it's a nice unit. Now, giving away a box is cool enough, but it'd be even cooler if it was full of stuff, right? Right. Check it out. That is some good-looking stuff. Let me show you what we got here. Got a couple complete socket sets, ratchets, extensions, wrenches, a whole handful of air tools, screwdrivers, scrapers, big old pry bars, vice grips, pliers, star bits, and hammers, and everything goes in the box. Now, I know you're probably wondering what it's going to take to win all this stuff. Well, all you got to do is go to the Cornwell Tools website or the Gearz TV website, sign up for the contest, and hopefully you will be the one that they call for the box. Now, with all the cool stuff that's in here, there's one thing missing, one thing that every gearhead needs, and that is a BFH. You gotta have a BFH to pound on stuff. And Cornwell didn't include it, so I'm adding my personal BFH to this for the winner. Now, obviously, Scott, I need another hammer. The rest of you guys, good luck.
And now, what are you working on?
For today's What Are You Working On, we're featuring a guy that took the same idea of what we did with the Banshee, take a little sports car, stuff some serious V8 power in it, but he did his own version of it, and that's what we like to see. Now, his name is Lee Radow. He's from Prescott, Arizona, and his car is a '94 Mazda Miata. Now, he raced this car and had a lot of fun with it until he blew up the original engine. Well, Lee, as you can see from this picture, is a huge Chevy fan and a huge big horsepower fan. So the first thing that he did, check this out, he tried to stuff a blown big block Chevy into his Miata. Of course, that didn't fit too well, but he decided he was going to take a late model LS2 Corvette engine, along with the help of his grandson there, and a T56 6-speed, and stuff it into the Miata. Now you can see the work that he did. Thing came out looking great. But he didn't just do an engine and drivetrain swap. No, he did a complete suspension and interior just like we did on the Banshee. That is so important. Now, Lee wanted the car to look stock, so he didn't mess with the outside. Take a look. He ended up with a stock-looking Miata that will absolutely run like a scalded dog. Well, you get the idea. Now, you're wondering, what does he do with the car? Well, here's a shot of Lee out at Laguna Sega, taking it around the track, enjoying the car. And my favorite shot here he is on a road course. Now look closely at all the cones on the ground behind him. You think that car's not a handful? I think Lee hit every cone on the track, man. That's great. The best part is Lee's got himself a car that he can drive every day if he wants to. Here's a picture of him and his wife out enjoying the car, just saying, come on, man, take on our Miata. Lee, that's awesome, man. Fantastic job. Now, for the rest of you guys, if you've got a project that you're working on, it doesn't even have to be done yet, just something you're doing yourself. Send some pictures into gearstv.com. We'll see if we can get it on the air. All right, that takes care of it for today. You can see the domino was worn out. So, we will see you next week. All right, come on.